Here we go. Cheers. Do not adjust your dials. Welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis, a leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about life's lessons, business, and leadership. And yes, the reason I said do not adjust your dials is because this is not a Whiskey Words, folks.
No, sir.
It may look like a Whiskey Words, but this is a podcast. And there's a slight difference. And that difference is, I don't know. We're going to talk about more than one thing, because when I do a Whiskey Word, it's what? Usually one thing.
Usually just one thing.
Yeah,
we'll probably talk a bit longer too.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk a bit longer. Probably turn a couple of the pieces and parts into maybe a Whiskey Word or two. But
yes, sir.
you know, it is always nice this time of year to come down to the desert. It's always nice to come down and spend some time with Camden and Miss Jess. Miss Suzanne and I always love that, and we get to see Loogie, he may make an appearance.
If he wakes up from that nap,
yeah,
he might be there for a while.
Wow, yeah. When Loogie's laying in the dirt, takes a big "I'm asleep" sigh and blows it out his nose, and the dust flies up. I don't think he's getting up for any time soon.
Sure makes the dirt look comfy, doesn't he?
Man, he makes just about anything look comfy. That's the thing. God has given him the gift. He could have been a hound dog in another life.
Yeah, he could.
There's no doubt about that. He definitely could have been a hound dog, because I've seen some hound dogs sleep like Loogie does, and he ain't a hound dog, I can tell you that.
Yes, sir. Well, and I'll put the plug in for Loogie, of course, since we're talking about it to start off the episode. Go on Instagram, Loogie Lounging, L-O-O-G-I-E, Lounging. He doesn't post too much, but he got some good pictures up there.
Yes,
you want to see who we're talking about?
Yes, he does. And after all that Loogie talk, I wanted to shift to what we were going to talk about today, and that was that gnat that was trying to get in my whiskey. And now I can't remember what we were going to talk about today.
Move and fight.
Move and fight. That's right. So, I talk about you got to move forward all the time. I even talk about the putting the paddle in the water. When I was growing up, those of you who haven't seen that Whiskey Word, go look it up as putting paddle in the water. But the metaphor there is, when I was a kid, I was a Boy Scout and an Explorer Scout, and what we used to do is, one of the things that we'd do on the weekends for our camping trips, we'd get in our canoes and we'd go down the Brazos River. And the Brazos River, there ain't a whole lot of ripples, let alone rapids.
Pretty slow river.
Yeah, it's slow and flat. And if you want to go somewhere on the Brazos River, you could sit and float. And you sit and float, and you can rest assured that the river is going to push you into an overhanging branch or a sandbar. And the only way to move where you want to go is to put your paddle in the water. Now, having done that as a kid, a teenager, ornery teenager that thought he was a badass, put that paddle in the water and pull.
I don't think that teenager's gone.
Put that, that's presented a whole nother subject and problems. But the point of that is that in order to go where I wanted to go, I had to put the paddle in the water and go faster than the water. I had to put resistance into my life. And I know you're a fan of resistance. We've talked about Angela Duckworth, right?
With grit.
Grit.
Resistance is the war of art.
The War of Art. Yes, that's not Angela.
No, that's Stephen Pressfield.
Pressfield, yes, Mr. Pressfield. Give him a shout out, because it is that resistance enables you to steer the canoe where you want it to go. Without resistance, you cannot steer. And that is, the river is life. It's the Brazos River. I know it's not really the river of life, believe me. I've spent a lot of time on the Brazos growing up. It's much better now. Thank you for cleaning it up. But it is not the river of life. But that's the metaphor. You're putting your paddle in the water and you're moving forward. And one of the things, as Cam and I were getting ready for this show to talk, that we were thinking about or wanted to discuss, is the fact that you cannot go all the time. And you've heard me talk, I just gave the whole metaphor about being in the river and putting your paddle in the water. But there's also, you hear me talk about moving forward. Mm-hmm. We talk about with rugby, front foot rugby,
Yep.
Not back foot. I've even, another metaphor I used on one of our master classes was 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? As George Strait, I believe, says, give George, the king of country, shout out. But you can't always be going. And I think that was the point that we were talking about. I'll stop and let you throw in your thoughts on that moving forward and why and when we need to pause.
Yeah. I think it all really goes back to the self-awareness as far as when you need to pause. But, in all the different metaphors and analogies, don't ask me which one's which today, but in all those different aspects of trying to talk about, taking movement and why it's important, the one that I've really settled on is, and I've used this on the podcast before, is talking about having a wound, whether it's a physical wound or, mental wound. If you just lay there and you nurse it, you ain't going very far. You don't want to just roll over and die, really is what it is, right? If you don't take any sort of movement. The other end of the spectrum is not much better. You just keep moving and act like your arm ain't bleeding. Well, it ain't going to last that long either. You're not going to make it that far down the road. And the balance there is you do have to bandage yourself up and keep moving. But every now and then you got to take that bandage off and you got to scrub that wound. And I think the better analogy, maybe just because both of us have bad backs, I think of this, but when your back is hurt, you don't want to move. And what is the first thing every PT, every doctor will tell you is, well, my back hurt today, so I laid in bed all day. That's the worst possible thing you could do for your back. You have to move. I know with my back, and my back's a lot better than yours, after my last surgery, I didn't move and I was following everything super, super tight. And the rest of my body was hurting like crazy because I wasn't moving. And as you take that movement, you find the more natural way to go through things. You got to work your body naturally if you're going to use it, right? Yeah, you could probably sit still the whole time if you just plan on sitting still, but I plan on being active, so you have to get your body ready for that. But then you have to have that self-awareness of when is it too far. Back pain, we talk about. Muscle pain's okay. Muscle pain is good pain. Shout out to Sierra for that, the good pain, right? But the bad pain is nerve pain and things like that. And you learn to tell the difference between those kind of things and how you want to move forward with that. And I think, to take that into the mental wound space or any other aspect you're trying to carry, that's what it really comes down to, is recognizing when you're in a situation where you need to stop, where you need to take the time to, scrub that wound out a bit. And that takes a lot of practice. There's a lot of times where you're in a lot of pain and you feel that need because your back's hurting, you want to lay in bed all day. And as nice as that bed might feel, that's not going to help you. Taking the movement is what's going to help you. And you have to overcome that feeling that I just want to sit here. I want to be comfortable because there's less pain if I stay here. Even though there's more pain with movement, you zoom out, there's going to be less pain in the long run because that movement is going to help prevent future pain. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is when you don't have movement, the pain gets worse slowly, but it's always going to get worse. But if you take movement, then you can get rid of that pain.
And we were, just before we grabbed whiskey, we were having a coffee with Doc Ryan. Shout out to Doc. Good to see you today.
Not Doc Conley, the other Doc in Tucson.
Yeah, there's a couple of Docs.
Shout out Doc Conley, too.
Yeah, but we're hanging out with Doc Ryan. We were talking about why you didn't describe or didn't admit you had a problem, that wound. You may have, we were even talking about boys on the rugby, the Arizona rugby team, in that same aspect of, well, I want to continue to move, and I want to continue to play in my time. And what Doc and I were talking about is those times when we're on the team and we want to go on a mission, want to go with the team, and you got that thing going on in your elbow or your shoulder or your knee, and we would go tell the doc. We would tell the doc so we can get Motrin, because that was what we did, Motrin. And you take some Motrin and you just move through the pain. And what that does is it doesn't allow your body to heal. And this goes back to that pause and knowing when you have to, when you can push through the pain. And this is that whole differentiator, and understanding your body and understanding your mental state of, all right, do I push through this, or do I need to pause and rest? Now, rest is a different thing, because active rest is generally when you're talking about that, my back hurts, so I want to lay in bed, I don't want to get up, I don't want to do anything because my back hurts. But we also know that if I lay in bed, the muscles just continue to tighten up. Well, the same thing happens with actions in your business and your life. Yeah, you may have gotten kicked in the jimmy, and it may hurt really bad. It may suck because that guy did something that he said he definitely wasn't going to do. We were talking about Doc with that too, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. No names mentioned on this part, I can tell you that.
Not that kind of podcast.
Yeah, because when that happens, you got to pause and regroup. And the other day I did a master class where I talked about that when we were talking about resilience, resilient leadership. Well, I was talking to myself and the people on the other side of the camera.
I was listening.
Thanks to the folks who joined me on that live master class. But it's that I did 5 steps in that pause. When you get hit in the face, when you get knocked down, you got to pause for an assessment.
Yep.
And I think that's what we're getting to is yes, you got to move forward, but if you're continuing to move forward and you continue to get punched in the face, you might want to pause and reassess why I keep getting punched in the face. I'm visualizing Cousin Connor right now, and if Cousin Connor and I are in the ring, we're roughing it up, and he keeps punching me in the face. Well, you know what? I'm going to step back and go, wait a second here. Wait a second, little cousin, because Cousin Connor only comes up to about here. I'm going to reassess that situation. I'm not going to keep moving forward. I'm going to pause.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold up and I'm going to assess, all right, well, why do I keep getting punched in the face? Why did that happen? Go back to business. Why did that guy screw me over? Why did I hire that guy who was cooking my books and screwed up my taxes? Why did I hire that program manager who failed and almost got us kicked off the contract because of how bad of a job he was doing? And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about pausing. It's not a timed thing, it's an assessment thing.
Yeah, and the thing that keeps coming to mind talking about the analogy of the pain and the personal pain, the pain you feel in your body, what that means in your business. What it really reminds me a lot of, and stop me from going completely down this rabbit hole, all right? I know I'm tiptoeing my way around, but when you talk about physical injuries and opioids, and why opioids became such a big thing, what led so much of the opioid crisis, besides all the other, rabbit hole type stuff. But one of the things was this idea that pain is bad and that we need to completely eliminate pain. And the reason that, we can all now, I think most of us would look at that and say why that's such a fallacious idea is because you need pain, because pain teaches you things. You talked about, getting Motrin in the Army. I was fortunate enough when I had all my injuries playing rugby, I got ibuprofen. I didn't get any opioids or anything. I know how fortunate I am looking back on that.
Yeah.
Because that was what happened to a lot of people my age who got prescribed opioids.
Yeah.
But you get on the ibuprofen.
Thanks, your doc.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on her name. We were just talking about her. She went to Utah with you.
Yeah, Diane.
Diane.
Yeah,
Doc
great.
Diane. Thank you, Doc Diane, for that.
Another doc. And the thing is, even if you're on ibuprofen, something that doesn't really block the pain, anti-inflammatory, all that kind of stuff, what they'll tell you if you're an athlete is you don't want to take it before the game. You take it right after the game. Because during the game, you need to feel the pain, because you need to feel if that pain gets worse. And I think there's a really similar thing that can happen in the business. You know, there's no opioids for your business. I guess you could just take opioids. It might work. I don't know. But
Good luck with that, folks. You know, give us your feedback on that one.
Right. Want to read that case study. But no, the just escapism in general, though. The idea that there's pain in your business, and so you, instead of feeling that pain, instead of feeling that anxiety, that stress, whatever it is that you're feeling inside of your business, you decide to completely step away. If you're my generation, you're playing video games, watching TV, you know, scrolling on your phone, on Instagram, all that kind of stuff. All of these things that take you away.
Follow us at Tribe and Purpose.
Yes, sir. And 10X your team. Don't forget.
10X your team. That's right. Yeah.
But when you go into that mode of escapism, what happens is you are completely ignoring the pain. Just like with an opioid, you're completely blocking it out. What happens when the opioids are gone? That pain hits you hard too. Same thing happens in your business. You try to play the escapism game in your business. I've done this many a time. And you go, oh, I'm stressed out about this. I'm just going to leave it. And you go off for the weekend. Maybe take a 3-day weekend because you're so stressed out that you deserve the extra break. You come back, it's worse. It's always going to get worse. You have to resist the temptation of that escapism. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is being able to live with that pain and recognizing what that pain is and what it isn't inside of your business. If you're anxious about things in your business, is that a real pain? Is that something you can't live with? No, that's part of the game, right? And I think you have to recognize what that pain is so you can live with it, so you can feel when it gets worse. You talk about, I mean, I'm sure you feel it's a tribe of purpose. Frankly, I don't as much, just because of my difference in role compared to my other entrepreneurial ventures where it was just me. Yeah. When you're in that situation and it's just you, and you feel all that weight all the time, and it hurts. It's pain. Right? It's anxiety. If you mask that, you don't notice when things get worse. You don't notice the difference of stressing about not hitting your numbers, and I didn't hit them last month. That's what that difference becomes when you dive into that escapism. And so you have to learn to live with that pain, move with the pain, address it as needed, take your time, rest, all those kind of things, rest actively as well. But you can't act like you don't need that pain. It is a functional thing. There's a reason that it exists inside of your business, just like there's a reason it exists inside our body.
What I'm thinking about is, is the pause, because I've talked about this, and I wrote about this in the Monday Moments newsletter a couple weeks ago. The destroyer and the creative, the yin and yang, hanging out with my buddy Brian. And we started talking about that when he was going on patrols in Afghanistan with his team, and he was writing poetry. And we were talking about the Book of Five Rings and the samurai, Miyamoto Musashi. Boy, we're throwing out all kinds of names today in the show. If you haven't read the Book of Five Rings, highly, highly recommend that book. So here's the point, is that you have to have two sides of the brain. We have it. And what I mean is you have to be action focused and creation focused. So the warrior and the poet, the destroyer and the creative, the action and the creation. And what I mean by that in the business sense is I'm driving on my business, I'm doing this, and this, and I'm focused, and I'm reading this book, and I'm studying this, and I'm talking to these people, and I'm listening to this podcast. It's all business. Well, I'm ignoring a creative side of my mind. And that's the pause. That's the differentiator, I believe, that you need to have. And what is that? How do you do that? How do you create in something completely different? One of the tools that I use to get into a little bit of the sharing of processes and techniques is I just go for a quick walk. I've got a little loop that I do. It takes me 6 minutes. if I'm walking quick. Some here lately, it feels like it takes 7 or 8. But that amount of time does a couple things. One, I'm no longer stagnant
Yep.
physically. And because I step away from the problem set, the great thing about our mind is my mind, the subconscious mind, continues to work on the problem. And what I'm doing is I'm taking that pause, and that pause allows, and I'm no psychologist, so I can't describe what parts and pieces of the mind really are doing these things, but I know that the main part of my mind, the conscious part of my mind, is no longer focused on that math problem, if you will. It's no longer focused on how do I do this when I step away and I go for a walk, because now I'm separated, I've changed my environment, I've paused from that activity. I've even taken and stepped out of that environment that may have pissed me off, that phone call, that disappointment that I might have had, and I go for that walk, and it does a number of things. It gets the blood flowing, and now I've separated from whatever it was that I was pounding my head, writer's block, if you will, pounding my head against the wall. I can't figure this out. And as I step away and I go for that 6-minute walk or a longer walk, whatever it is you do, or go to the gym, that blood flow changes the whole state of mind. If you want to change your state of mind, you got to move. You got to take physical action. And that's the difference, and I think that's really what we're getting to. Yeah, there's a pause, a rest that we have to do in a physical recovery. The getting kicked in the jimmy, roll around on the floor a little bit, and realize that don't step into that kick again, right? You got to recover from that and understand what happened there. But you also have to do that mentally in business. If you're not collecting the information and understanding the information, digesting the information, look at it. We've talked about this a number of times when we look at our numbers in our business with what's going on and what's that mean. And it's like we can sit there and we can go, I don't know, we can guess, or we can step away and continue to collect information and see how that feels and see what it might bring us to, what other solutions might come to mind.
Yeah, for me, what keeps coming to mind is the and we've talked about this a bunch on the podcast, but the micro and the macro. And you have to be able to live in both of those worlds, because we exist in both those worlds. If you can spend your entire time in the macro, looking at the big picture, you forget everything that happened in front of you. If you spend your entire time in the micro, then you don't see the big picture, you're not taking action in the right direction. What it comes down to is understanding when you need to bounce back and forth between those two. To take the example, you talk about fights. Talk about Cousin Connor, who I heard he might actually fight this summer. I heard.
Well, he's in a movie.
Highest first paid movie star ever, or something like that. Hey, shout out to Cousin Connor. He can spin anything to his favor. But anyway, when you're in the fight, you can't make those adjustments. You're stuck in it. You can do little adjustments, but as far as like a strategic change, you can't do that. That's in between the rounds. We talk about that in rugby all the time. You set people up, they can make their adjustments on the field, but really, you don't really make any changes till halftime. And that's your one set of changes, then you go into the second half and let it flow. And you have to be able to recognize in your life and your business when you're in the micro, when you're in the macro. A lot of the time, we get so obsessed with the macro that we forget all the little things that we can do that are inside of our control to move it forward. We're thinking about these big problems and all this stuff in the future of the business. We don't spend any time looking at right now, thinking of our call with Leela this morning. It's like, hey, did you go take the action? Did you call enough people today to go get your sales?
Yeah.
Did you do the thing that you can do right now in the micro for it? And you have to be able to recognize both of those. Because the other piece of it, bringing it back to the pain that we've been talking about, is pain is very different in both of those two worlds. When you talk about macro pain, it's big stuff, and it's frankly a lot of unsolvable stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what life is. That's life. That is the pain that comes with life. In the micro, so you can't ignore that either. You got to make sure you're addressing those problems moving forward. We talk about lifelong learners. That's what it's all about, addressing those big problems, right? We talk about that in the intro of every episode. But in the micro, you have to make sure you're willing to address those problems too. Because just like that wound on the arm, if you're not scrubbing, if you're not taking care of it, as you move forward, that will bleed into bigger and bigger problems. So you have to be able to recognize that. And as silly as it sounds, you know, always comes back to, it's almost like the golden rule we talk about communication, just self-awareness. Being able to pause, whether it's meditation, whatever it is for you, taking a walk. Lots of the greatest philosophers loved walking for a reason. The change of scenery does something to your brain. It's feeding you those ideas and those kind of things. It takes your, I think I might got this right, takes your active system of your brain and gives it something to do and lets your reflective system run. Mm-hmm. When you're sitting there staring, you talk about writer's block, you're actively trying to think over and over, what am I doing, what am I doing? Whereas you start going to something else, you occupy your conscious, you open up the subconscious to solve all those problems. And so you have to be able to recognize when you need to use those different situations. And I think that just comes down to a maturity aspect. But I want to throw that to you because I think, you know, with your background in the Army, I wonder how much, I wonder what your answer would be of when it is the time to fight versus not. You know, what's not necessarily the Army doctrine, because you were small Army, you were Special Forces, but what does that look like as far as the decision of when you need to wait and when you need to keep moving? What are your thoughts there? Sorry, no cough button.
Yeah. When do I? Well, I think let's see if I understand what you're asking me, because, you know, when do I move? You know, as a leader, I have to assess what's going on with my team. Mm-hmm. I do my self-assessment first. Where am I at? Am I able and capable? And sometimes I got to talk to my number two and get my number two's feedback and input on whether or not, you know, if I'm struggling. That's why you have a number two, by the way, is, all right, well, you need to take the reins on this, or you need to pick up this or that. You know, I think it's as a leader, you have to understand yourself well enough, that self-awareness and mindfulness, and then you have to understand your organization, your team that you're leading, what's their state. Because as a leader, your job is to understand that of each individual on your team and where they're at and how they are showing up, because you may need to put that kid on the bench. He may not be the one who starts tomorrow. Yeah. Right? He may be the one that's going to come in and make an impact, or he may just sit on the bench because even in those last 20 minutes of the match, he still may not have it. You know, I always talk about my one boy in the snowstorm.
Yes, sir.
You know, and man, that was a true life lesson. To see he wasn't the captain of the team, but he was a leader of the team because of how everybody looked up to him. And when he faltered, and he didn't see it in himself, but when he faltered, we had to pull him out and rest him. And then he recovered, but rugby, you can't put him back in that sense. And I think that is a testament to leadership, is where's my team? What is the state of my team?
What is the goal? And because I'm gonna take it to the next level on that, you have to understand the goal. You know, we're talking about the analogy of the fight. When do you choose to fight? When do you choose not to? Art of war. Yeah. The goal of the fight is peace. Yeah. You can't become addicted to the fight. We talk about problem solving fever, bush fever, right?
The workaholic. That's
all falls in that same category, right? You get addicted to the fight, and so you just want to keep fighting. You don't realize that you don't need to fight anymore. And if you put your team in that situation where you keep putting them into the fight, they're going to get burnt out. A game like rugby, they're going to get hurt, right? Because they're not ready for that fight. And you have to recognize as the leader that what is the goal here? The goal of the conflict is to reach the end of the conflict. You cannot have a system where your entire goal is the conflict itself, because the system will eat itself. You know, shoot, what's that? That's the Eisenhower speech about. I know there's a little bit of a rabbit hole. Eisenhower talking about military-industrial complex, and he says when the goal no longer becomes peace, you have a problem. Yeah. When the goal becomes the war, not the peace, you have a big problem. And when you look at it in your business, when you're just looking to solve problems and you're not looking to piece it together towards an end goal, you reach a point in your business where everyone's busy, but they're not productive. They're working their butts off. They're crushing it in whatever they're doing, but it's not contributing to where the business is trying to go. It's not fighting the right fight. And that's where that rest comes in, is making sure you're working in the right direction. Whether it's resting your back a little bit in the bed, not all day, but resting it a little bit so you can feel what you need. Or in your business, taking the time to recognize that you're trying to solve the right problem. You know, is it time to fix our marketing for this product, or is it time to get a new product? Is it time to shift the business? Is it time to close our doors? Whatever it could be, all those options are in front of you. But if you get so addicted to the fight that you never look at those options, then you're never going to see them.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point, and I'm getting distracted because Loogie just got up, and what I'm seeing is that movement forward can only be so much that you can handle, both mentally and physically. Yep, and he's done with the show, folks. He is.
Sorry, folks, no special appearance.
Yep, no guest appearance by Loogie because he is just gone inside.
Guess what he's going to do in there? Go to sleep.
Go to sleep. Yep.
I love that dog.
You know, it is back to our original point of how do we and when do we know? And I think that's part of the game.
Is there an answer?
There is no set answer because you don't know until you try it. You know, you can do one of the things that I pride myself on is understanding my body and what affects it and how it affects it. But I also, the more I've been working, and you can see through my mustache and when I take my hat off, you can see that I've practiced a little bit. And I'm still practicing. And what is that practice? That practice is getting me better at knowing, all right, don't pick that up, don't walk that far, don't run, don't do this, don't spend 10 hours driving into a problem set that maybe there's no solution to. Maybe that's not the right way. And I think this is where it gets to, ooh, that was close. I think this is where it gets to, well, you don't have to do it on your own either. And I think back to, you know, something we don't talk about very much on the show, but we talk about in the business a lot, is what's your tribe? What's your tribe look like? And this is where your coach, your mentor, that person who knows you well enough and can give you that outside perspective. You know, you mentioned Leela earlier. You know, she told me, one of her coaches told her this, and it's such a great expression of you can't read the ingredients of the salad dressing when you're inside the bottle. Right? You can't. I don't know if you ever tried that, but you know, hold up a bottle of salad dressing and try to read the ingredients from the wrong side. Well, you can't. And that's why you need that other person in your tribe that is going to tell you, that you can go to and ask those questions and get that advice, because nobody gets there all by themselves. You got to have a tribe. You got to have a group of people. And I think that's the other piece of this, because that's the right answer. And that's the right answer for everybody, whether it's a coach, a mentor, somebody on your team. You know, if you're a CEO and you're in the C-suite, you're not the only one in the C-suite.
Yep.
You know, how do you know, if you're the only one in the C-suite, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle because you feel like the load, you're the only one that's carrying the load. You've got to have trusted people within your tribe that you can go to and offload. I mean, I have conversations with clients all the time. I wouldn't say it's the same client each time, but sometimes it's just the offload. They just want to put it in a plain, blunt term, they just want to bitch. They just want to vent. They want somebody that can take and listen, and they can offload the crap to that person. And that's part of the pause, right? Even if it's just for an hour a week, an hour a month, that person that you can call up and say, hey, you got a second. You know, let me offload what's going on in my business, how it's affected me, and why I'm struggling with this. I don't need answers. Here, this is your marriage tip for the day. When your wife comes to you and starts telling you all the problems, it don't mean she wants you to give her an answer. Okay? Not every time. Believe me. There's a reason Miss Suzanne and I have been married so long.
But I think to that, you got to understand when somebody wants the answers, what they actually want out of it. And a big piece of that is for you to understand that for yourself. When you go to bitch, to vent about whatever it is that really all you want? You got to have those people in your life that you can vent to. But there also comes a point where if you're just bitching the whole time, you're not doing anything. Right? You get it out. There's something to be said. You know, folks, there's as much as you might want to, you know, this is where I think a lot of the stoicism take on it would be that it's not fair for you to unload that negativity into other people. You know, it's inside of your control. You can do that. But I think there is a point where there is something cathartic from that. There is something physiological that comes from you just bitching for a little bit. There is something that you get out of it. But it's recognizing when that ends. Going back to the bad back example. Yes, laying in bed does help you. But laying in bed all day doesn't. There's a point where you can complain, you can bitch, you can vent about stuff going on, and that can help. You just keep going, though, that's not doing anything. At that point, you're just making it worse, just like you would with your back. And you have to be able to recognize that. And I think the other piece you touched on, which is really, really key, because we talk about, especially mentioning stoicism, you know, understanding what's inside of your control, not working for other people's judgment, not worrying about other people's judgment, those kind of things. The people whose judgment you can be okay with are people that you feel actually understand you. And you have to understand yourself to be able to go through that. I know, and again, we're not naming names on that kind of podcast. We got some people that we both know that will tell you they know you. And they will tell you, I know you, Otis, I know you, and you're going to do it, and I need you to do this because that's what. And even if it sounds like they're right and they might make sense, you can know deep down, they don't really know me. They don't know what they're talking about, that kind of thing. You have the people who do know you, who can help you with those things. I think about some good friends I have who they know I am an overthinker. And I will talk them through something, and they will just go, Camden, you know what? It sounds like you're overthinking this. And I go, shit, man, you're probably right. And then I'll pick one, because it doesn't really matter that much. If I'm overthinking it that much, if there was an answer, I would have found it. Right? Yeah. But if you're just bouncing back and forth, sounds like it's 50-50. You just got to pick one. But you have to have a friend, have a colleague, whatever it is, who you can trust enough, you think they know you well enough to tell you that. You know, if somebody doesn't know me and they tell me I'm overthinking, I don't believe them. Right? Even if they might be right, but if they don't understand me, I don't feel like they understand me, they don't know where I'm coming from, they're not going to help me because they don't understand the situation. And I think the same thing goes inside of your business as well. When you go for outside advice in your business, there's a whole long list of people that can give you advice. And a lot of it will be unwarranted advice. That's a whole other subject. But if they don't understand what's going on in your business, they can't really help you. If they don't understand who you are and what you want out of your business, they can't really help you. You have to have those people in your tribe that understand those aspects of your life, those aspects of you as a person, those aspects of your business, so they can actually give you the real advice. Because what happens is, you know, take that overthinking example. There's also times where those good friends will tell me I need to keep thinking about it. And I can figure it out because they know it, right? And they know what the situation is. And so you have to be able to understand when to take that advice, when not to, when that advice applies and when not. And not just lying to yourself about it.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. It's the inner circle, right? That's the way I like to think about it. Is who are those handful of folks, you know, to use the Marshall Goldsmith approach of you are the sum average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And who are those inner circle people that know me well enough, and I trust their opinions of me. I think that is such a critical piece of success in life is knowing who those people are.
And going back to, because you always say, is always start to knowing yourself. You can't know if they know you unless you know you.
Yeah. And I was thinking about what I'd learned today, and I didn't take notes because my hands were occupied. But the one thing that jumps out at me, and I never thought about this, is the fact that Doc Diane, how much care she took of you, and never directed you into opium, not opium, but opioids. Jesus, that'd be really bad.
People still do opium these days?
Yeah,
Smoking opium?
They do.
Like we're building a railroad.
Yep. But the fact that she took care of you in that way, because you were in a state where that could have sent you down a very bad path, and that's so that is what I learned today, is how great Doc Diane is, and what she did for the team when she was working with the team.
Yeah, we still need to get her on the podcast sometime.
Yeah,
they should be out at the game tomorrow, so we can talk with her then.
Yeah,
but,
let's do that.
First thing for me was don't talk so much that you forget to puff your cigar and it goes out on you, especially while you're on a podcast, because that's how it goes. But no, I think honestly, I know this is my point, but I didn't really put it together, of thinking about the comparison of opioids and blocking pain and trying to avoid pain in your business. The goal is not to have no pain. The goal is to be able to manage the pain. The goal is to be able to live with that, recognize good pain from bad pain. We talk about work beats worry, right? That's good pain in your business. The pain that inspires you to keep working, to bust your butt, to keep the business moving forward. And there's also bad pain inside the business, right? You have to be able to tell those apart. The goal can't be to have no pain, because you're not going to get that. It's an unachievable goal. And if you do reach that point, it's just like the opioids. You're in no pain, and you're going to wake up on the side of the freaking road somewhere. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I learned the pain lesson when I was a kid. We used to do movie. There was an assembly or something like that, and they put a movie on, and the movie that had the biggest impression on me as a kid was Brian's Song. A movie about Gale Sayers and Brian Piccolo. And if you haven't seen that, highly recommend that.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that what they did to Gale Sayers, the great Chicago Bears running back, was they injected him with painkiller so that he could play, and he ended up destroying his knee because he couldn't feel the pain. And that was, it's a much sadder story after that, if you can believe it gets sadder than that. But the point of that is that if you mask the pain, you're gonna miss what's going on, and that's in business. That's ignoring the indicators. That's ignoring the data. It's not paying attention to the cash flow, the bank account, the customer reactions, the customer feedback. So
giving into that escapism, and I think the other end of that is you can't just completely give into the pain either. You can't feed that pain and just keep working and fall into that bush fever mode and problem solving fever, where you just keep going to the next thing, and you never stop to think, am I solving the right problems?
Yeah. Yep.
Got to find the happy middle.
Yep. And I was going to say, Cam didn't run us out, but you took your last sip of whiskey. Maybe you
I got a little sip in there.
You can squeeze some out of your rocks there, and then run us out.
Thank y'all for listening to this episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. And a special thanks to Loogie for joining us, even though he left about partway through the show. He ain't getting paid for this one. I'm not getting paid. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to someone else in your tribe so they can enjoy it too and can learn from it as well. Always looking to grow our tribe and share with other lifelong learners. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And if you're not subscribed on YouTube, what are you doing at this point? The channel just keeps growing. I don't know why you ain't subscribed yet, but we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You just hadn't thought about it. There's your chance. Subscribe on YouTube. And we'll be back next week with another great show. Without a beautiful background, without the whiskey, without the cigars, probably. But it'll still be a great show.